How are you?
Doing good. Thank you.
Welcome to NetSuite Tech Talks. So today we're going to talk about MCP, and we're going to talk about artificial intelligence in NetSuite. But let's start with some introductions. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Ratul and I. I am a software architect here at Crow. So I mostly oversee the technical architecture. I'm mostly involved with the relationship between the technicals within the NetSuite ecosystem. And then I also oversee our technical team. So, yeah.
And I'm Alejandro Alvarez. I am one of the practice leaders responsible for our NetSuite practice. Been in the ecosystem for about 13 years now, and as you know, I do a little bit of everything, from sales to engagement management to functional solutioning. The only thing I don't do is what you do, which is the technical stuff. I wish I'd learned how to develop, but I haven't yet, and probably won't at this stage in my life. But in today's podcast, we're going to talk about something that you and I have been doing a lot lately, which is artificial intelligence and MCP integrations. Between NetSuite and some large language models. So I'll kind of set the stage. Why don't you give us a little bit more depth in what we're going to talk about today?
So before we start, I just want everyone to get back to the big picture here. So as we have seen, let's say the AI for the last few years, it has changed from, let's say, how it is evolved from analyzing the data, structuring the data, and then the generated or like the Gen AI that we call it, right? So now what happens with NetSuite is, so let's say if you want to get something out of the NetSuite, we do not have anything that is connecting with the AI tools, right? So here where MCP comes, so where it acts as a bridge between NetSuite and then the AI agents, right? So this is where the AI tools uses MCP as a bridge between NetSuite and the systems, right? And then where it brings all the intelligence from the AI tools and then between the with the NetSuite.
No, I've been using MCP a lot lately, and it's extremely exciting, right? So we're gonna have a 3-part series. Today we'll do high-level overview of MCP. Second part, we're going to talk about specific MCP and NetSuite and some of the things we've done, and then the next part we'll talk about some of the challenges, and that will be probably our next session. Thinking about who's our target audience, who's interested in this, right? I think it's everybody. From CFOs and controllers that can pull out a lot of information in natural language, to some developers that are creating very, very cool stuff, right? And we'll see examples, but in NetSuite at least, MCP, for those of you that don't know, and I think you'll talk about this later, stands for Model Context Protocol. So it's not a NetSuite thing; it's an AI standard that's being created, and I know that you'll dive into that later. But it's very cool. It takes about 5 minutes to set it up in NetSuite. And with the right permissions, as I always say, you can do whatever you want. Almost anything you want if you're ingenious enough. But before we get into that, like I said, target audience, everybody. So if you're listening to this and you touch NetSuite or any other ERPs, you'll probably want to listen to what we're going to talk about. But let's start with what is NetSuite, right? Obviously, you and I know what NetSuite is. We've been doing NetSuite for a long, long time, but a lot of people don't know what NetSuite is. Some people think we're saying Netflix. I've heard, but people don't know what I do for a living, and I've been doing this for 14 years. It's like Chandler on Friends. Those old people know what that means, like me. But what is NetSuite? So I always say NetSuite is the first cloud-based ERP, right? And what is an ERP? You know what ERP stands for?
Enterprise Resource Planning.
Exactly. So it used to be, that's what things used to be called. Now they're business systems, financial systems. NetSuite as a cloud ERP was the first cloud ERP. Started in 1998. Founded by Evan Goldberg, who came out of Oracle. Was given money by Larry Ellison and said, start an accounting system in the cloud. Nobody knew what the cloud was in 1998. But he started it. It was called NetLedger, and now 27 years later, it's part of Oracle again. So Oracle acquired them, 8-9 years ago, and still cloud-based, still, a very, very cool system. And, you do a lot of things that make it very strong. I'll talk about the functional. Maybe you'll talk about the technical stuff that makes NetSuite very strong. I think one of the strengths of NetSuite is that it's easy to use. It's very easy to configure. People say out of the box. It's not as simple as out of the box. It's not QuickBooks, but it can be implemented relatively quickly, right? Especially if clients know what they want. But the other cool thing is that it doesn't pretend to be everything to everybody. So it can do some things, but then it relies on the platform, which I think is a superpower of NetSuite, is the platform, right? So why don't you tell us a little bit about the platform?
Yeah, so with NetSuite, it comes with a good customization, right? So as we have seen, so I think it was 2007 that NetSuite introduced the NetSuite Script 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been around for let's say 8 years, and then in 2016 they introduced the Script 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's where the shift from, let's say, normal customization to high-level customization happened. So yeah, with NetSuite customization, it gives the ERP a very good reach to their business process,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah.
Yeah, and part of my job here at Crow is what we call the buyer's journey, right? It's advising clients to buy NetSuite or not buy NetSuite, whether it's a good fit or not. But really my passion is architecting, is designing stuff.
Yeah.
And every time I'm in a sell cycle or buy cycle, I would call it, I get asked, well, can NetSuite do that? And I always say, based on the platform, you can do anything you want if you have enough money and enough time, right? So I think what you said is true. It's grown in a way, it's architected, and it's very powerful. But you can integrate with any system out there that's open APIs. You can integrate. I think SFTP. You do a lot of SFTP integrations.
Yes.
And SFTP stands for Safety File Transfer
Yeah.
Protocol,
Yeah.
secure
File Transfer Protocol. Yep.
Yeah, you can do CSV uploads. You can do REST, SOAP, webhooks, a lot of stuff that I say a lot, but I don't know what they mean. But it also can be customized internally. So we built functionality within NetSuite that's very cool.
Yep.
But one of the things that, it does also is that it grows with the client. Right? So you can start with a handful of users and add functionality, add horsepower, add integration channels, etc.
Okay.
But it also has limitations, right? And I think this is where AI comes in, right?
Yeah.
So I know that in the past you've helped projects that I've been in build suite lists to do things that NetSuite reporting cannot do or Safe Searches cannot do.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the limitations that you've seen over time with NetSuite from a data extraction perspective.
So let me tell about the scenario. So let's say the user wants to generate a custom, let's say, report for a particular CFO, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, what happens is the user have to go to NetSuite. He needs to create multiple safe sources, and then he needs to come up with custom KPIs, manage all the data in between, and then he presents it, right? So at that time, let's say CFO asks another questions like, oh, give me a report for this particular division, right? So in that case, what happens is the user will again go to NetSuite, and then he'll have to change or update his safe search, and then come up with that updated data, right? So in that process, what happens is there are a lot of manual processing happening, right? So the user may let's say do some wrong things in that case, right? And then at the same time, this also have some limitation over, let's say, versioning, right? So what happens is, let's say this particular the gap that we have, going back and forth between the CFO and then the NetSuite. So this can be reduced by using MCP. Okay.
Yep.
So with that, if you just connect from the AI agents to NetSuite, and then with the particular prompt, you can just get all the data in that prompt directly. Yeah.
No, it's you got me thinking about some things. Safe searches, clients don't sometimes. We as NetSuite consultants are so used to building safe searches, and we think it's so easy.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I've heard from many clients that it's frustrating building a safe search. The way NetSuite is amazing, and this is not knock on NetSuite, but it has building a report or safe search is not super intuitive, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the areas where NetSuite has, you require a little bit more technical skill. It's not as natural, right, for that controller or that CFO or that operations manager, depending on the area. And I demo NetSuite many times, and I always show safe searches, and it's not always as intuitive. So I think MCP definitely helps there a lot. And also, I think NetSuite, to be honest, I think has lagged a little bit on AI capabilities compared to other more modern systems that we're used to as individuals, right?
Right.
It seems like everything has AI now.
Yep.
Call center, any phone app, we're so spoiled, right, with artificial intelligence right now. And NetSuite has done some things in AI, in the true sense of AI for a long time. You talked about predictive analytics, earlier as what AI was, right? And now it's more generative, and eventually will be agentic.
Yep.
NetSuite has done predictive analytics for a long time, right? Functionality as the text enhance and the intelligent item recommendations, but it really wasn't generating information, right? It was very specific and it was programmed. Now with AI, which I guess a lot of people may not understand, that AI is not programmed, right?
Yeah.
AI, it's not somebody that programmed the system. It's a lot of learning, and we can do a whole session on what AI really is, right? But this is extending some of the limitations of NetSuite. Having said that, NetSuite is coming up with NetSuite Next, and so that public information about it, where a lot of this is going to be inside of NetSuite, using NetSuite Net and Oracle, Ask Oracle, I think it's called. But I'd like to move on to why businesses are exploring AI, right? We live in we live in an information economy, right? Everything is about information.
Yes.
So from a functional perspective, and as a business user, clients just need information now, right? So why do you think, Ratul, that information is so critical right now, and why is MCP a great step for users of NetSuite?
Okay, so let me start with that. So as I have already given the example of the CFO asking for a report. So let's get away from that perspective, and then let's say we talk it from a user perspective. Let's say in terms of, whenever multiple users, are using NetSuite as their admin works, right? So let's say day-to-day process, they are using NetSuite to onboard some of the users, right? So in that case, they have to go through multiple forms to activate and inactivate users, right? So with that, what can happen is with the use of MCP, they can directly go to any AI agent tool like Claude or ChatGPT. They can just put a particular prompt, and then with that particular prompt, all of the users that they are onboarding for that particular month, they can just activate or inactivate based on that. So that is something like an automation that can happen. Okay, and then another thing would be, in terms of AI automation, if we talk about. So in the AI automation, what happens is, the finance team always goes for checking for the invoices which are overdue, right? So in that case, what happens is it's for the users to go through it and then get the due date and everything, and then he needs to also follow up, and then also at the same time he needs to know what is the probability of that particular payment to be paid on time, right? So in that case, yes, we can directly go to Claude and then or any AI agent tool, and then put a prompt, and then based on that it will give you the results, right? And then with that, he can again follow up with an email with the customers, right? So these are the things that I think some of the automations can be done with the MCP.
And also there is a need for faster information, right? So in the past, and when we look at the examples later, like you said before, right? If somebody wanted to get a specific insight into something that doesn't have a safe search. Yeah, I can go in and build a safe search. It'll take me 5-10 minutes. Then I have to publish it, or I can just ask, like I was asking an employee that had the information all in their head, right? So it's pretty scary for us consultants,
Okay.
but it's also exciting, right? Because there's a lot of, that's what ERPs or business systems are meant to do, give us information very, very quickly. So I think we're coming to the end of this first episode, Ratul. What do we have in store for the next episode?
So in the next episode, we'll talk about how we're connecting NetSuite with MCP, and then what are the technical terms in that, and then we'll talk more about, let's say, how in the users are using in the real world use cases. So we'll talk about that.
Perfect. See you next time.
Okay.